When the soul cracks, the lasting traces of narcissistic abuse in the victim's mind. As you begin to understand the narcissistic pattern, the manipulation, the control, the endless need to dominate, it's also vital to reflect on what healthier alternatives truly look like. Awareness alone isn't enough. You must begin the process of reclaiming the parts of yourself that were slowly eroded under their influence. I want to speak to you today not as an analyst of human behavior, but as someone who deeply empathizes with the quiet pain of those who've lived under the emotional tyranny of a narcissist. So many survivors describe their experience as living in a fog, constantly doubting themselves, shrinking their voice, and surrendering their boundaries just to keep the peace. Psychologists often describe this as psychological erosion, a process in which one's identity is gradually worn away by repeated invalidation and control. Narcissists, as countless studies in personality psychology have shown, don't see others as individuals with their own emotional worlds. To them, people are instruments, supplies to feed their fragile sense of self. Dr. Ramani Durvasula calls this the economy of ego, where every compliment, every concession, and every sacrifice you make becomes a deposit into their inflated but unstable self-worth. And over time, as you keep giving and they keep taking, something inside you quietly fades. You lose sight of your distinct voice, your values, your spark, the essence that makes you you. Naturally, the question that echoes through the mind of every survivor is this: after all that damage, can I ever truly heal? The answer, according to trauma psychologists, is a resounding yes. But healing isn't about pretending the past never happened. It's about rebuilding strength in the places that were once broken. Imagine a person who has knee surgery. The joint may never feel exactly the same again. There might be stiffness or a faint ache on rainy days. Yet, through rehabilitation and care, that knee can grow stronger, more stable, even more resilient than before. Similarly, when you've endured the emotional surgery of separating from a narcissist, there may always be what psychologists call a psychological limp, a lingering sensitivity, a hesitation to trust, a whisper of fear. But that does not mean you are broken. It means you have survived something profoundly destabilizing and are now learning how to walk differently, more mindfully, with a deeper awareness of your worth. This process of recovery begins with understanding what the narcissist took from you. One of the most common aftereffects, as trauma therapists repeatedly observe, is the loss of trust. After being gaslighted, lied to, and emotionally ambushed, your nervous system learns to brace itself. Survivors often say, "I don't want to get close to anyone again," or "I just can't tell who's real anymore." This isn't cynicism. It's self-protection born from betrayal trauma. The mind, after being repeatedly violated, struggles to distinguish safety from danger. Psychologists emphasize that regaining trust is not about rushing into new relationships, but about rebuilding a relationship with yourself first. Every boundary you set, every no you confidently say, and every act of self-care becomes evidence that you can trust your own judgment again. Only from that inner stability can trust with others slowly be restored. But hand in hand with broken trust comes another haunting residue: guilt and shame, often misplaced, what experts call false guilt. Narcissists are masters of projection. They dump their unresolved insecurities and flaws onto you, then convince you that you're the problem. Through relentless criticism, sometimes subtle, sometimes brutal, they shape your self-perception. You start to internalize their voice, hearing it long after they're gone. Why did I do that? Maybe I really am too sensitive. These micro-criticisms accumulate like emotional splinters, eroding your confidence until self-doubt feels like second nature. Clinical psychologists explain that this dynamic functions as a form of psychological conditioning. You were trained to anticipate criticism, to self-censor, to walk on eggshells. This is why survivors often struggle to relax even after leaving the narcissist. They're still living with an internalized abuser in their own mind. Healing, then, requires consciously retraining your inner voice, learning to separate their shame from your truth. And yes, therapy can be a lifeline here. A trauma-informed therapist helps you dismantle the internal scripts left behind by narcissistic abuse. They guide you in recognizing the subtle signs of manipulation, rebuilding trust in your perceptions, and learning to soothe the hypervigilance that once kept you trapped. Recovery is not about erasing the past, but about integrating it in a way that restores your agency. In time, as psychologists often remind their clients, the most profound act of healing isn't forgiveness or understanding, it's reclamation. Reclaiming your sense of worth, your autonomy, your capacity to live freely without someone else defining your reality. The narcissist may have stolen years of your peace, but they cannot own your future. That belongs entirely to you. One of the quietest wounds left behind after surviving a narcissistic relationship is the lingering doubt about your own decency. It's a haunting echo that doesn't fade quickly, the internal whisper asking, "Am I a good person?" When someone you trusted has spent years twisting reality, shaming your emotions, and projecting their flaws onto you, it's not unusual to question your moral worth. Psychologists often call this moral injury, the erosion of one's belief in their own goodness due to repeated manipulation and blame. Narcissists thrive on making you feel like the villain of your own story, and over time, their distorted narratives start sounding like truth. Healing begins the moment you realize that doubt itself was planted there, not born from who you are, but from what was done to you. As the months or years pass, that internal doubt often seeps into your self-esteem, shattering your sense of worth like glass struck one too many times. Survivors often describe this stage as a quiet emptiness, a feeling of being unseen, unlovable, or tainted. You start to wonder, will anyone ever want me again? Can anyone see the good in me after all that's happened? Even when someone offers you kindness, you flinch. You second-guess compliments, suspecting they're just pity. This is what trauma therapists refer to as emotional hypervigilance, the nervous system's overreaction to the potential of being hurt again. After living in a war zone of emotional unpredictability, your body doesn't yet know that peace is safe. Rebuilding trust in love, psychologists remind us, requires slow exposure to genuine care and the patience to sit with discomfort instead of running from it. But another shadow soon appears, the haunting belief that you are damaged goods. This phrase echoes in many survivors' hearts. If people really knew what I've been through, they'd run. You fear that your trauma has marked you, that the pain you carry makes you unworthy of connection. Psychologists explain this as toxic shame, a deep-seated belief that the self, not the experience, is bad. Narcissistic abuse often breeds this because the narcissist's goal is not merely control, it's annihilation of your identity. They systematically replace your self-concept with their own narrative of who you are: weak, crazy, ungrateful. To recover, therapists encourage survivors to reclaim authorship of their story. Journaling, trauma-focused therapy, or even speaking your truth aloud can help rewire this internalized shame. You were not the chaos, you survived it. In response to that loss of safety, many survivors develop an armor of defensiveness. It makes sense, you've learned the hard way that vulnerability can be weaponized. Yet what begins as protection can solidify into isolation. Psychologists often call this protective overcompensation. You build walls so high that even kindness feels threatening. You want to trust, but you don't know what safe looks like anymore. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, a leading trauma researcher, writes that the body of a trauma survivor remembers the betrayal, making openness feel physically unsafe. Healing this takes time and gentle exposure. Trust must be rebuilt through consistent, respectful connection, never through forced intimacy. The walls must not be smashed down, but slowly softened, brick by brick. Then, as freedom finally arrives, another paradox often unfolds. You might feel a sudden rebellion, a wild urge to reclaim what was denied. Psychologists liken this to what you described as the dog in the fence mentality. After years of control, when the gate finally opens, you sprint without direction. You crave freedom so desperately that you may mistake recklessness for liberation. It's understandable. This is your nervous system's swing from suppression to overcompensation. Yet if left unchecked, it can lead to self-destructive choices, new toxic relationships, impulsive behaviors, or defiance that hurts only yourself. True freedom, psychologists remind us, is not the absence of boundaries but the rediscovery of choice. Healing means learning to run free with intention, not out of chaos. As time passes, another emotion starts surfacing: anger, often mixed with bitterness and resentment. These are natural, even necessary phases of recovery. After years of silencing your rage to survive, it finally demands expression. But psychologists warn that unprocessed anger can morph into what's known as emotional displacement. You might lash out at people who don't deserve it, friends, colleagues, or even strangers, because your mind still needs a target. This is the trauma trying to complete an old loop, to express what couldn't be expressed before. The key isn't to suppress your anger, but to channel it. Physical movement, expressive writing, or trauma-informed therapy can transform anger from a weapon into wisdom. And yet, if left unhealed, resentment can curdle into cynicism, a quiet refusal to believe in goodness again. You start doubting compassion, kindness, and fairness, dismissing them as naive illusions. I don't think that stuff really works, many survivors confess, but psychologists emphasize that cynicism is a shield, not a personality. It's your mind's way of saying, I never want to be hurt like that again. To heal, you must learn that hope and caution can coexist. Healthy skepticism protects you, but total cynicism imprisons you in the narcissist's shadow. So, when the darkness of doubt, shame, anger, or cynicism feels overwhelming, remember this. Each of these emotions is a symptom of survival. They mean your psyche fought hard to protect you. Healing doesn't mean erasing those parts, it means teaching them peace. As trauma psychologist Dr. Judith Herman once wrote, recovery unfolds in 3 stages: safety, remembrance, and reconnection. You've survived the storm. Now, it's time to learn how to live again, not as who the narcissist told you were, but as who you were always meant to be. When you finally leave a narcissist behind, it's easy to assume the battle is over. Yet, as many psychologists observe, their influence often lingers long after they're gone, like an echo that keeps shaping your thoughts and emotions. You may find yourself replaying old arguments, defending yourself in your head against accusations that no longer matter. This is what trauma specialists call post-abuse conditioning. Even though the narcissist is physically gone, they still occupy mental real estate. The key to recovery lies in realizing that while they once controlled much of your external world, they do not deserve ownership of your inner world. Your task now is not just to move on, it's to reclaim your mind. So how do you begin? The first step, psychologists say, is to listen to your pain. Pain, though unbearable, is a messenger. It tells you something vital about your unmet needs and violated boundaries. When you feel that tightness in your chest or that wave of despair, your psyche is trying to say, this was not right. Something has to change. Dr. Gabor Mate often reminds trauma survivors that pain is not an enemy but a teacher. It directs you toward what your spirit truly values: peace, dignity, empathy, and safety. To heal, you must turn inward, not to punish yourself, but to understand what those emotions are asking for and to honor them. As you reflect on your pain, you begin to see patterns. You remember how control, condescension, and manipulation became normalized. Now, your healing asks a question: what are the better alternatives? This is where you begin crafting your higher priorities. Psychologists encourage survivors to redefine these consciously. Values like mutual respect, emotional reciprocity, and empathy. Each time you set a boundary, you reaffirm your dignity. Every act of self-respect becomes an antidote to years of degradation. Healing, then, is not an event but a daily practice of choosing integrity over chaos. But awareness alone is not enough. You must also learn to recognize the signs of narcissism before they ensnare you again. Many survivors, heartbreakingly, repeat the same emotional cycle because familiarity feels like safety. The brain, conditioned by trauma, mistakes intensity for intimacy. This is what trauma therapists call trauma bonding, where the nervous system equates unpredictability with love. You might escape one narcissist, only to fall into the orbit of another with a slightly different mask. That's why self-education is so crucial. Learn the red flags: excessive charm that feels rehearsed, lack of accountability, subtle gaslighting, boundary testing disguised as humor. Listen to your gut because it often knows before your mind does. Psychologists recommend intentionally surrounding yourself with emotionally safe people. Those who practice empathy, curiosity, and accountability. They may not be many, and your social circle might shrink at first, but what remains will be real. In group therapy, survivor networks, or trauma-informed communities, you'll find people who no longer compete for dominance but collaborate for growth. Dr. Brené Brown often emphasizes the healing power of collective empathy, the experience of being truly seen without judgment. In such spaces, your nervous system learns safety again. You begin to believe, perhaps for the first time in years, that connection doesn't have to hurt. And then comes the most profound realization of all. The narcissist was never the authority on truth. They tried to position themselves as judge, jury, and God of your reality. They convinced you that they defined what was good, what was love, what was right. But as psychologists remind us, narcissism is not confidence. It's defense against profound insecurity. Their cruelty was never proof of superiority. It was proof of emptiness. Dr. Ramani Durvasula, one of the leading experts on narcissistic abuse, often says, "You can't win with them because their game isn't about love. It's about control." Once you see that, the illusion breaks. You realize that their opinions, once treated as gospel, were merely the ramblings of a deeply troubled psyche. Healing takes root the moment you say, "You no longer define me." Though they may have dictated much of your external reality, your routines, your choices, your sense of worth, they never owned your inner self. Psychologists describe this as reclamation, the process of retrieving the lost fragments of identity scattered by years of manipulation. Through therapy, mindfulness, and self-compassion, you begin to gather those pieces. You rediscover your voice, your laughter, your quiet joy. Every time you choose calm over chaos, you reclaim another part of yourself that they once tried to extinguish. This journey is not quick. It unfolds over months, years, sometimes a lifetime. But each small act of self-awareness, each compassionate choice, is a declaration of sovereignty. You are saying to the ghost of your abuser, "You do not get to live rent-free in my mind anymore." And in that defiance lies freedom. If the path feels heavy, know that you do not have to walk it alone. Trauma-informed therapy, whether in person or through trusted online platforms, can serve as a lifeline. Psychologists emphasize the importance of professional guidance, as healing from narcissistic abuse involves rewiring the body's trauma responses as much as understanding the mind's patterns. Supplement this with education, therapeutic courses, books, or communities that encourage reflection and growth. Healing isn't linear, but it is possible. Above all, remember, your worth was never destroyed. It was only buried under their lies. With time, support, and compassion, you will uncover it again. And when you do, the narcissist's power dissolves completely, because the one thing they could never possess was your soul.